Hey guys, I hope you're doing good. Happy Wednesday. Normally we'd be getting ready for church and Brother Jonathan would bring a message to us and we'd have prayer meeting, and because of our current circumstances we can't really do that. But I thought I would share, for those of you that would like to see it, something that I have a few miracles from the book of Jonah. I've been going through the Priscilla Shire Jonah Bible study with some friends of mine. We were a couple of weeks away from finishing it, and before all this virus stuff came about, and so I've still been kind of going through it, reading it on my own, but I'm very excited to get back with them to finish the study, and I'm excited to get back to church. I miss my youth. I miss everybody there that hasn't been able to come to the services that we have had. I'm just ready, like most of you, for things to go back to normal. But I did want to share this with you. So most everybody is familiar, Jonah and the whale. The Bible actually says it was a big fish, but for like a lot of children's stories, you've always heard whale. But just a little bit of background, Jonah was a prophet, so he knew God very well. So he knew that when God came to him and said, I want you to go to Nineveh and preach to the Ninevites so that they can be saved, Jonah knew what he was supposed to do. There was no, did God say that? Maybe he didn't mean that. He knew that that's what God wanted him to do. And so he went to Joppa so that he could flee to Tarshish. So at the time, Tarshish was the farthest point from Nineveh that had been discovered by man as he could get. So he literally went as far away from the Ninevites as he possibly could. And we know that God sent a great storm on the sea, and he caused the boat to rock back and forth, and each one of the sailors on there, verse 5 in Jonah chapter 1 says, the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his God. They threw the ship's cargo into the sea to lighten the load, and meanwhile Jonah had gone down to the lowest part of the vessel and had stretched out and fallen into a deep sleep. So these sailors and the captain were all crying out to their God, and obviously was not working. So they approached Jonah and said, what are you doing sound asleep? Get up, call to your God. Maybe this God will consider us and we won't perish. And so they ended up waking him up, and he ended up admitting that he was a Hebrew, and he told them, he said, throw me overboard. He said, me disobeying God is why this has happened. Throw me over. And so they didn't want to do that at first, and then they ended up doing it. And so then verse 14 says, so they called out to the Lord, please, Lord, don't let us perish because of this man's life, and don't charge us with your innocent blood. For you, Lord, have done just as you pleased. Then they picked up Jonah and threw him into the sea, and the sea stopped its raging. And then, but where the first miracle is in this, it says, verse 16 of chapter 1 says, the men were seized by great fear of the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. So even though Jonah disobeyed and went in the farthest direction that he possibly could, there were still sailors and the captain of this ship that were saved because Jonah said, my God, I didn't listen to him. This is why. Throw me overboard. And when they did, and they saw that the seas were calm, they knew that God was real. And so these men were saved. So that's our first miracle. So then in chapter 2, well, actually at the end of chapter 1, it says, the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. So something that I had never considered until I did this Bible study. You think about a great fish swallowing you whole, and it seems really kind of gross to be floating in the belly of a fish and, for 3 days and 3 nights and not knowing what's going on. But have you considered what would have happened to Jonah otherwise? If they threw him over the side of the boat into the sea and there was nowhere for him to go, he was going to drown. God literally sent that fish to save Jonah's life. And so that's the second miracle that we see in the book of Jonah, is that even though Jonah disobeyed and he ran, he didn't listen to God. He was running to the farthest place he could away from God's presence, even though we can never leave God's presence. And Jonah knew that, but I think he just didn't want to do what God was calling him to do so bad that he just was going to try it anyway. But even though he did that, God still spared his life by sending that fish. And so then Jonah cried out to God after 3 days and 3 nights, and we know that God commanded that the fish spit him up on dry land, and he did. And so that's neat. And so then you go to chapter 3. In chapter 3, verse 1, this is the last miracle that I wanted to share. It says, the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. And so there's really two things in that. The word of the Lord came to Jonah. The fact that God even speaks to us at all is a miracle, because we're human and he's God. And so the fact that he loves us enough to speak to us, but he also, it says, came to Jonah a second time. He gave Jonah a second chance. Even though Jonah had turned his back on God and had said, no, I'm not doing what you want me to do, he still gave Jonah that second chance. And Jonah still wasn't real excited about it because he didn't like the Ninevites. He didn't want them to be saved. But he did eventually go and preach to them. But just think about that. I've recently painted my bathroom cabinets the color blue, and I was looking in the store for some stuff to kind of match for decoration, and I came across this little whale calendar, and you can change the dates out and the months. It has the different things. And I bought it to put on my bathroom counter as a reminder that sometimes the big fish that are sent in our lives that seem like they're an interruption actually are sent to save our life. So just kind of consider that. Maybe the next time that you're interrupted or you feel like God's calling you to do something that you just don't want to do, just think about maybe why he's doing it. Is it to save your life, or is it to save somebody else's life? Just kind of consider that. And I hope you guys all stay safe. We're praying for you. We're praying that we can be back together soon. We love you. Let us know if you need anything. Take care. Bye-bye.